All right, so I guess I just got to break the news. Episode 8 and 9 are the worst episodes of season 5. Oh, glad I got that out of the way. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real ranking, and I lied. Okay, I'm sorry. I told a little fib. Episodes 8 and 9 are not the worst episodes of season 5, but where do those episodes and every other episode in season 5 rank for me? Well, today we're going to break down my ranking, my ratings of all 9 episodes of season 5 of The Dragon Prince. We got our top tier, our mid tier, and our bottom tier rankings for these episodes. And guys, some of my choices might surprise you. Now, according to you all, the real friends and family, you all voted in my community poll and said that, well, episode 9 was your favorite episode, but not by much, because it was literally neck and neck with episode 8. Guys, I will say that I am not shocked that the season 5 finale ended up being the most revered episode. However, according to the number of views on my reaction series that I did during the first week of release for season 5 of The Dragon Prince, which again you can find in the playlist in the description below, apparently episode 9 was not the most loved episode. According to the views, guys, you all voted and said episode 8, Finnegrin's Wake, was the one that you wanted to tune into the most, and that was literally just inching out episode 1, Domina Profundis, or Domina Profundis. I gotta get that name right. But now the time has come for you all to find out where these episodes rank for me, which episodes are my favorite, and which episodes are my least favorite. And don't worry, I'm giving you my Jelly Tart ratings too. But guys, before we get into it, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between, especially The Dragon Prince. So if you don't want to miss out, smash that big red button below, subscribe to the channel, help us get to 20,000 before the end of 2023. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and get loud down below in the comments. I want to see your ranking, alright? I want to see your top tier, your mid tier, and your bottom tier rankings for all 9 episodes in season 5. But y'all, alrighty, let's waste no more time and let's get started from top to bottom with my episode rankings. And we're going to begin with episode number 1, Domina Profundis. So for me, episode 1 was the strongest season opener since season 3 for me. I really do love how well this kind of set the tone. And I'm not gonna lie, an underrated season opener is in season 1. The very first episode of this series did a nice job at sort of setting a good foundation for the rest of the show. But I did love them introducing Domina Profundis right away. Contrary to Rex Igneous in season 4, where we got Rex Igneous at the end, the very tail end, no pun intended, of the season. Now, I do have my gripes with this episode too, because we don't see Domina Profundis in the rest of the season, which is a little concerning, honestly. I wanted to see more archdragons here, but maybe there is a method to the madness, and I will choose to believe in Aaron EHASZ and Justin Richmond, because they've got a little plan. According to my interview, they got some stuff cooking for seasons 6 and the final season, season 7. But I do like that we got some cool moments. We got a very little moment too, you know what I mean? Like, it was really cool to see Callum stick up for his beloved, you know. It's just, I just really loved what they did with this episode. I laughed, I got emotional, and I was just really happy that we were back. And again, even though the animation, this isn't my favorite rendition of the animation in the series, I still love the style in seasons 1 through 3. This episode did prove to me, at least, that the animation was a little bit more refined and the lighting was much stronger. So yes, episode 1, where are we placing this, guys? Oh boy, let's see. You know what? Let's start off strong here, guys. Episode 1 is going straight up to the top tier. Oh my gosh, we're starting off on a high note. But what's the rating? Well, I would give that 4 Jelly Tarts out of 5. Now, what you're going to notice is that not every 4 Jelly Tart out of 5 episode is going to be in the top tier, but I do feel like this is a very strong episode, and it deserves that top tier ranking. So now, y'all, let's move on to episode number 2, Old Wounds. Now, it is an episode that features the most Raylum, you know? So if you're a Raylum fan, this is probably a 5 out of 5 for you, and I am a Raylum fan too. But I'm also a realistic fan and gotta look at the episode as a whole. Now, this is a strong episode on its own. Of course, it's a 5 out of 5 for the Raylan moments, but I do think episode 2 had a little bit more to do, if that makes sense. You got to kind of converge all these storylines and start to paint the picture of where they're going. And I was really looking forward to them just continuing this sense of adventure and showing us that even though our heroes are kind of separated, they're still together. So episode 2 for me, I give that 4 jelly tarts out of 5. But where would I rank it? I don't know. Let's take a look here. Well, I'm going to be honest, yo. I'm going to put this in the mid tier. Now, is that a bad thing? No, that doesn't mean it's a bad episode. I just don't think it had as much of an impact as episode 1. So, now let's move on to episode number 3, and that's Nightmares and Revelations. So I have good things to say about this episode and things that aren't so good to say about this episode. I love what they did in season 5 with telling the story of Viren in his state of grief and anger, frustration with himself and with Erebos. But when he's in this dark magic comatose state, we get a look inside of Viren's mind. And it's nice to see the parallels between Viren's nightmare sequences and reality with Claudia and what Claudia is doing and how she's sacrificing a lot of herself to save her father. So listen, those Viren moments are A+ moments. It's just the rest of the episode that I didn't necessarily felt worked. The pacing was a little off and started to sort of get some humor that didn't really work for me in this episode. But again, the Viren moments save this episode, keep it afloat. But is it enough, right? I don't know. I would give it a 3.5 out of 5 jelly tarts. So not the worst thing in the world, but again, does it get a bottom tier ranking? Well, let's see, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and say no. I'm going to put Nightmares and Revelations episode 3 in the mid tier. And the reason I say that is because it's not bad. It's just a little bit of a step down. But it isn't the worst episode of this season. So now let's move on to episode 4. If you watch my reaction to this episode, I was unwell, but man, I loved this episode so much. This episode, episode 4, of course, being the Great Bookery, is, I'll just go out and say it, it's my favorite episode of this season, guys. It's an incredible bit of storytelling, direction, the action, the art style, the score, and the setting really allows the stakes to be felt. Once Callum and the gang get to the Great Bookery in Luxoria, it starts to feel like things are not going well for them. You know, we start seeing infected creatures and animals. We see an infected banther, several of them. We see, of course, Zubeia get infected herself, and, you know, our heroes are in danger. Amaya and Corvus have to hide themselves in this ironclad book drop. Don't have that in my local library. But the Great Bookery is just a great combination of mature storytelling, serious tones, and straightforward action. And I love this episode. It's all, if you couldn't guess it, it gets a 5 out of 5 jelly tart rating for me. And of course, it's going into the bottom tier. No, I'm kidding. Of course, episode 4 gets right up there in the top tier. And like I mentioned, it's a 5 out of 5 jelly tart rating for me, which makes it so far the highest rated episode in this ranking. So let's move on to episode 5, where we get Archmage Akiyu, or Yoda, according to you all, in The Dragon Prince. Now, episode 5 is titled Archmage Akiyu, and while this episode still looks beautiful and has good narrative elements, there are some elements that don't work at the same time. The lore is expanded in this episode, and I loved it. However, I do feel like the momentum hits a little bit of a snag here in this episode. Again, not a bad thing when you're trying to just tell the story of Erebos getting trapped by the jailer, Archmage Akiyu being sworn to secrecy, and then breaking that promise just 5 minutes afterwards. So it's interesting to me to see Archmage Akiyu in her older, years of her life, and Callum and the gang working alongside her. It's a good episode. Just don't necessarily think I loved everything. And again, some stuff, especially with Claudia and Terry, gets put on the back burner. Not in a bad way, but at the same time, I didn't really feel as impacted by episode 5, especially coming off of episode 4. So episode 5, for me, I would still give it a 4 out of 5 Jelly Tart rating because, again, I'm a sucker for expanding the universe of the Dragon Prince, and that's what this episode does. But where do we place it? Well, it's not a bottom tier episode, but it's also not a top tier episode. So I'm putting episode 5 right here in the mid tier. So we're starting to see this ranking list kind of flesh out. You can kind of get a vibe for where I'm going, but now we're getting into the second half of this season, and there were some banger episodes, guys. Well, after this next one. Episode 6 is titled Bait and Switch, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is the weakest episode of the season. I don't know, guys. It felt too pedestrian for an episode that was really supposed to be the introduction to Finnegrin, which it was. Finnegrin didn't really have as much of an impact either. You know, I do like the character. I think the voice acting isn't terrible, but there's a little left to be desired, but they could have done more, especially with the hype surrounding Finnegrin. It just did not feel as intense. Now, does Finnegrin become a more impactful villain as the season goes on? Absolutely, especially in episode 8. But episode 6 left me disappointed. And also, King Ezrin, you're going to risk the lives of your friends and the mission at hand to save Baitlings? I mean, listen, Hat, Sneasels, and I forgot the other one. Every time, all 3 of them are cute. But come on, bro. You have to be realistic here. And that's, I think, King Ezrin's immaturity as king coming through. Like, yeah, you got to try to save as many people as you can, but you're going to steal from this pirate who could literally kill everyone. I don't know. It felt like he was not thinking in that moment. So I was conflicted, of course, with the narrative, but season 6 for me being a 3 Jelly Tart out of 5 type of episode, I am very confident in saying that episode 6 goes in the bottom tier. And so far there's only one episode on the bottom tier, so will that be the only episode in that low ranking, or will there be others joining it? Well, I'm looking ahead, and I don't think so. So let's move on to episode number 7, titled Sea Legs, and that is the name of Finnegrin's ship, and we learn why very quickly. However, episode 7 was not just all about Finnegrin going after Callum and the gang, but I did love how they balanced the Sunfire Elves story this season, and it really comes to a head here in episode 7. I think Queen Janai has met her match, but at the same time, boy, does Queen Janai have a lot to deal with now that Kareem is beginning to rebel with a lot more than just him and Pharos. So episode 7 does set a really cool layer and foundation for the story, especially heading into season 6, but episode 7 is a good episode of television. I would probably give that a 4 Jelly Tart out of 5 rating, but again, where does Sea Legs rank? And I'm thinking, y'all, and I'm thinking we're gonna put Sea Legs right here in the mid tier. So you're probably thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Why are there so many mid-tier episodes? Well, hold on, we got 2 more left. We're fleshing things out here. But just because something's in the mid-tier doesn't mean it's a bad episode. And like I mentioned in my season 5 review, I do think the season of The Dragon Prince is the best since season 3. I just, of course, want to reserve that top tier for the best episodes of this season. So now we're coming up on episodes 8 and episode 9, and if this is going to be anything like the poll rating, I'm going to have a hard time placing these 2 episodes. So episode 8 is titled Finnegrin's Wake, and we saw our heroes in their most vulnerable and weakest states yet. Now, Callum has been taken control of by Erebos in episode 4 of season 4, so that's not this isn't the weakest state Callum's ever been in. However, he's got a dark decision to make. What a pun. Do you use dark magic to save Rayla? Do you give that spell to Finnegrin, or do you just keep it to yourself knowing it could be very dangerous? Well, Callum makes his decision. He's looking out for Rayla, but not before he punches Finnegrin in the face, and Rayla gets ice bloodbended. I felt so bad for her. This was a rough episode to watch if you're a Rayla fan too, because Rayla, I think, is hitting a ceiling. She's got to maybe have more weapons in her arsenal if she's going to want to face off against Erebos, because currently, I just don't see Rayla being able to hang with him. Might just be Callum and Erebos at the end of this season, or series, I should say. And I don't know who I would pick in that fight currently. But episode 8 was very well paced, very well directed, and the score was beautiful. But what I love the most is that finally we find ourselves in a situation where there are uncertainties ahead. Before, things were kind of predictable, but episode 8, oh man, I did not expect it to go in the way that it did, and it sets up, of course, for that Erebos episode in episode 9. But episode 8 for me, the penultimate episode of season 5, gets a 4.5 jelly tart rating out of 5. And I know you guys are shouting at me right now. I know you are yelling like, oh, it's in the top tier. Great. But it's not a 5 out of 5. Well, listen, I'll give out 5 out of 5s every day. And episode 4, again, still being my favorite episode this season, it reserves that spot. But will episode 9 get that 5 out of 5 rating? And will it be in the top tier? Episode 9, Infantis Sanguine, gets a 4.5 out of 5 jelly tart rating for me. Okay, this episode is so solid. It's very well done. And Blood of Child, well, we find out what that means. Well, it's the homunculus, the being, Sir Sparklepuff himself. Voiced by EHASZ, if you didn't know. So cool. But episode 9 features Erebos, the only time we see him, of course, in present day, in episode 9 and season 5. I mean, we're starting to get Erebos maybe just once or twice a season at this rate, but you know what? I'm okay with that because I've heard that season 6 is going to have more Erebos. So if that's the case, it's nice that they haven't actually just overused him and they're giving him still that Thanos treatment in a sense. Of course, I would love to see Erebos a little bit more, but episode 9 was well worth the wait, and I was super surprised that the child that, well, Viren has to kill in order to continue to live and, you know, not die after 30 days, I think it was. Well, that child is the homunculus, and it's the child that Erebos and Viren birthed by sharing their blood. So it's so interesting to see how episode 9 just threw us for a complete curveball, and the plot twist worked so well for me. I did love how they left it open-ended at the end. You know, is Viren dead or is he alive? Claudia lost her leg thanks to Rayla. Go Rayla. There was a great moment where we see them all on the boat, of course, with Erebos's prison, that pearl. So now things are starting to move into motion and things are setting up in episode 9, man. 4.5 out of 5 jelly tarts for sure. And you know where it's going. To the bottom tier. No, just joking. It's going right to the top tier. So guys, I think this list is solid, right? I think that every episode has its pros and its cons, but man, everything in the top tier, I just can't find too much fault with, to be honest. In the mid tier, some drawbacks, of course, things that maybe didn't hit as hard, but that bottom tier episode, episode 6, I wish just worked so much better, especially with the awesome setting that they played with in Scumport. But guys, there you have it. That is my tier list ranking of every single episode in season 5. So if you skipped ahead, oh my gosh, if you skipped ahead, I'm going and I'm calling Domina Profundis on your behind, because you, how dare you? I'm just kidding. It's fine. Not really. Watch the whole video. But if you did skip ahead, let me go ahead and recap it for you. So in the bottom tier, we have episode 6. In the mid tier, we have episode 2, 3, episode 5, and episode 7. And in the top tier, we have episode 1, episode 4, episode 8, and the season 5 finale, episode 9. Now guys, it's your turn. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of my list, and give me your tier list ranking as well. I can't wait to read through all these comments, and if you haven't already and you got to this point in the video, smash that big red button below, subscribe, and join the real family, because we're not done talking about the Dragon Prince, guys. I'm trying to get into this flow in the off season, right, between seasons 5 and 6, just to drop a video or 2 a week. Some theory videos coming, and I'm going to start predicting when we could get season 6 based on my interview with Aaron EHASZ. And hey, if you haven't already, again, smash that like button, guys. I thank you for your support. Thanks for sticking with me and watching all this. This is so much fun. I love ranking everything. At this point, I'm about to rank all the baitlings that they're going to save in season 6, I guess. Gosh, Ezra needs to clean that up. But y'all, again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Seriously though, I want a jelly tart now, every time.